Well, welcome to Scroll Sessions. Happy to be back, and we have Bobby Macey of Macey Media on the podcast today with your crazy sunglasses.
Crazy sunglasses, baby. Wear them loud.
I love
those
it.
things. Where are those from?
This is actually a brand. I'm an ambassador for these guys. They're called Knockaround.
Oh, I'm familiar with
So
Knockaround.
knockaround.com.
Yeah.
I love them because most of their glasses are like in between 30 and 40 bucks.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So like a week and a half ago, I'm at Bear Lake.
I was wearing Knockaround in junior high school. It was like right when they first started.
They're great
Yeah.
glasses.
Yeah, they're
And
cool.
they're not like Ray-Ban quality or Maui Jim, but like get nice
But they're good.
polarized
Yeah.
lenses and
Yeah.
fun styles, which is like, that's what I want is
Something
loud,
kind of
fun.
out there.
Yeah. So I think they're the Vans of sunglasses.
Oh, yeah. See, that's cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
I lose sunglasses all the time, and I always buy from like Blenders Eyewear because I've lost 3 in the past
broken. I
month
break
and a half.
a lot of mine.
Or
Yep.
I broke one pair and lost 2 others. I don't know where they went. But I will say I had one really nice pair of sunglasses that were per Soles once. They were like $350 sunglasses, but I got them on a deal. And I kept them for 7 years.
Dude, for some reason, when you spend that
Sometime-
much money,
yeah,
you're like,
you're
I'm
like,
not losing these.
I'm not.
Then
gonna
I
lose
lost
these.
Oh,
7 years later.
I've just
That's out of
graduated to
style.
the generic Amazon brands, and I'll probably never buy expensive
Dude, I've
sunglasses
done
again.
some Amazon recently.
Yeah.
Yeah. I broke them.
Yeah.
Well, I've got
I'm
a
like-
nice code for you gentlemen. if you
Sweet.
want.
Okay.
Nice. I like it. He's
Knock
an
around.
ambassador, everybody.
I love it. Knock around.
Okay. Well, we've talked on LinkedIn. We've seen
Yeah.
each other here and there.
I have a
But
lot of the same friends.
explain
Yes.
to us Bobby Macey. Do you go by Bob Macey or Bobby Macey?
Dude, I go by both. All my socials are Bob Macey because Bobby Macey was somehow taken.
Oh.
Yeah.
And
But
I'm
you-
like,
What's your wife call you?
she calls, depends on the tone. Every now and then there's a Robert that slips in there and I'm like, who's that?
Who's Robert?
No, my parents named me Robert. I've gone by Bobby my whole life.
Yeah.
And it's my personality.
Yeah.
And then in high school, people just kind of found this rhythm of like, Bob Macey, Bob Macey. And so then my socials are Bob Macey, and it's a little shorter. It's a little easier.
Yeah.
And, but if people call me Bob, it's great. But 99% of people call me Bobby.
Cool.
Or they call me some sort of like nickname like Bob Man or whatever,
Macey.
right?
Something like
Yeah.
that. Macey.
Cool.
Well,
Yeah.
what's your background? I know we were just talking before. You had kind of like started at DDM, but like walk people through your background a little bit and
So
your career so far.
this is me. I am that dude who is like squirrel, squirrel, squirrel when it comes to like career or focus,
Yeah.
right? And so I'm like, I gotta do something with people.
Yeah.
So I go to BYU, Idaho. My wife was already up there when we got married, and I'm like, okay, transfer up there. And I'm thinking like I'm too irreverent for BYU, Idaho. Not from like my lifestyle standpoint,
Yeah.
but like from a personality standpoint,
Yeah.
right?
You can't wear shorts. So
Yeah,
that's-
and I
yeah,
like the
this
long
is-
hair, and
yeah,
I like
exactly.
some of these things. And so I'm like, am I even gonna fit in there?
Yeah.
End up loving it. Made some great friends. Like got really involved in the communication department, and I'm like, I don't know what I want to do for a career.
Yeah.
So I was like, what can I do where I can be a people person? Because that's that's the common denominator here.
Yeah.
And so I chose PR. And I'm like, okay, well, PR helped me with my writing skills and
Yeah.
kind of telling a story and how do you manage kind of crappy situations if that hits a business or a person, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so I go through my degree and then never worked a PR job once. always
why-
worked
why is
marketing
that?
jobs. Because marketing jobs are what presented themselves.
It's true.
I didn't want to go to New York City with a young family and like grind it out and have some PR agency job. There were a couple of PR agencies in Utah, but it just like
It's not as much of a thing here.
yeah,
Yeah.
and like I have some good copywriting chops, but that's not what I wanted to do. So it got to the point where I was like, look, marketing is so similar. These are the types of jobs that are being offered to me. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
And so I had interned at Deseret Digital Media, DDM, where Shane worked. And I had interned there in 2012. And then my internship ended. And they're like, hey, you have 1 semester left. Will you just keep working remotely? I'm like, yeah, sure.
Dang, they were progressive enough to let you work remote.
Believe it or not, yes. I had
Things
the
changed by
coolest
the time you
boss.
got there.
This dude, his name was Rob Johnson. He's from England. He now works at Wise up in Seattle.
Oh,
Yeah.
But this dude was so far ahead of his time. Great manager. And then they offered me the job as soon as I graduate to come and work full time. I'm like, sweet. But then I was at DDM for 4 years, and I'm a content marketer. Like, I'm used to telling stories through copywriting, through video, through photo, whatever. And anytime I get into a scenario where I have to tell a story, I'm just buzzing with questions like, how can this be less lame?
Yeah, for sure.
And so I get to DDM, and I mean, you're thinking KSL.com, DeseretNews.com, a ton of these brands that are just writing long form content and using stock imagery.
Yeah, it's
So then,
decently lame.
yeah, and I'm like, this has been done before.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, it's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But on the other hand, I'm like, I think we can make this even better.
and they're going to die without innovation, right? I think that's the
Yes.
one thing KSL has constantly not recognized is that slowly but surely competitors seep into the market. And although you
Yes.
have this massive market share right now, here comes Facebook Marketplace.
Yep.
Here comes other news media. TikTok takes over people going to KSL's
here come
homepage.
local
like,
reporters
all sorts of things
that are
So
not branded. That
you've
are
got to
killing it.
innovate, and without innovation, you're going to die.
Yep.
That's
Which
something
is
they were
funny
missing a little bit.
because
No
at the
offense,
time I
guys.
was there, everything was about like digital disruption.
Yeah.
And like, hey, let's take the traditional news team and the digital team and let's merge them and let's, you
This was
know.
right at the height of, say, 2012 to 2013. That was like the heyday of social.
Yep.
When it was organic was like so easy. It was so easy to do, where nowadays it is.
Well,
It also was a
giveaway
heyday
gets you
for
a lot of followers
KSL,
back
but
then.
I would probably guess that KSL was doing even better back then than it is now.
It wouldn't surprise me. And they had a dude named Clark Gilbert at the helm, and that dude was money when I worked there. I love that man. And he was just like, he knew how to rally the troops, right? And then he left and went to BYU Idaho to be the president of BYU Idaho.
I remember this.
And now he's a general authority for the LDS Church and over education and things. And so he's just had a wonderful career. But I think I think maybe the focus on like disruption has been lost a little bit.
Yeah.
And he was pushing it and it was happening, but now maybe it's come back a little bit or stalled. I don't know. I mean, I haven't worked there since 2016.
We're only
right?
seeing it from the
But if we get a
outside
chance
in,
to dog on them, we're going to do it.
But I met some incredible people there.
great
and,
place.
And when I was in that org, they pulled me from one job and they recognized I had these PR skills. And they're like, well, we need you to manage a group of freelancers. So there was a few freelance writers, but they're like, we need you to build this product that is specifically for mobile revenue, because banner ads was their business and they were losing a lot of money with the shift to mobile. And at that point, I think it was 2014 when I moved into that role. So I'd been there 2 years, and I would say like I had made a lot of friends in the org. And my department was in a really weird spot because we were writing branded content, what used to be called advertorials, and now it was being called native advertising.
Yeah.
But it's what BuzzFeed was doing.
Yeah,
it
it's
was
the same
branded content that was written for brands and published in an editorial style. So you had to balance this thing of like, hey, the editorial team kind of hates you because they think that you are just the bane of their existence working a brand.
You're not a journalist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then the advertiser's like, hey, I know what I want to say. And you're like, hold your horses. I know my audience. I'll work you in, but you got to trust me. Mm-hmm. And so then you're fighting these two different battles, internally and externally. But then the money starts rolling in.
Yeah.
Within a year, so I'll be very transparent. I'm this dude, like peel back the curtain. At this point, they hired me, and my first year in that role, I was making $47K a year. And within that first year, I was managing a team of 50 freelancers, and we were paying those 50 freelancers $50 an article. We were charging $2,500 an article.
Yeah.
And my yearly salary is $47,000. So pretty soon we get to the point where we are producing $80K a month in revenue. That's $1 million a year.
Yeah.
Just on Brandview.
just on Brandview.
Yeah.
And I'm being paid $47 a month or $47 a year. Sorry. I mean,
You're getting half the revenue a month.
That would be nice. But 1 month, and they are covering the costs of the entire team for an entire year. Now, the part of that gets tricky is sales guys and sales gals have to sell it, right?
Yeah,
and they make a commission.
And they make a commission and this and that. So that's where the revenue gets a little murky. That now as a business owner, I understand that side. But at the time, I'm that young scrappy guy that's like, what?
What are we doing?
What is going on here?
Yeah.
And then I hear the president of the company say, he's like, I got to be careful about how I say this in front of Bobby because he could leave this job and go do this for anybody in the country and probably make a lot more money. And I took it as like a compliment because I didn't want to go to New York. I didn't want to go to some of these other places with a young family. But it was one of those things where it instilled in me some confidence of like, oh, I'm actually valued here. And so then it was like the value superseded the paycheck. And I was running, trying to build this product for, I guess, internal fame, right? And to have kind of that spotlight. I think most of us have this. I don't want to sound vain or like a schmuck.
It was very entrepreneur of you, I feel like.
It was. But it was also a time where I was young and even though I wasn't being paid maybe to where I thought I should be, I was getting a spotlight and some attention from Harvard grads, and these people were feeding me things that fueled me.
Yeah.
Like it was credential, right?
100%. So then they end up giving me, a raise to like mid-50s by the time I left. But
and now you're a big wig. You were a big wig when they started paying you.
I'm like, you can make that much money in a month now? Like, what?
Yeah.
It was one of those things though that really opened my eyes to like, okay, you got to look at a business and you got to look at a couple of things. One of those things is who's doing your work, right? And like, how do you, like the president of the company, he was talking about Brandview, he was selling Brandview, but he was never doing the work of the Brandview.
Yeah.
Right.
He was just happy that he had a profitable new product.
And he had a lot of arms of the business that weren't profitable.
Yeah.
So then my arm, because it was so profitable, was helping to make up for parts that weren't.
Yep.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I think every business is that way. And so now I look at it from a different light. But that was like a pivotal moment in my career because that taught me how to tell stories for different brands in different ways.
Oh, yeah.
Because in the same day, it was like Zion's Bank, then it was a solar company, then it was like Harmon's or some food company. And it was like, you have to flip your brain that fast.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And I was working with almost every ad agency in the Valley and several around the country to place these articles and to strategize. And it was just one of those things that was like pure adrenaline.
Yeah.
Right?
That's what's fun about working at an agency. I feel like, especially one that's a little more generalized and maybe not so niche specific, you're thrown to the fire, you have to adapt and understand and consume so much so quickly, like way more than doing anything in-house anywhere else.
But you're also working with local agencies, and although you're not getting paid extremely well at the time, you're working with every agency. They know you're behind this product, and that sets you up for massive opportunity when you do leave, right?
100%.
It's kind of the way it went.
That's the whole net worth is your network thing, right? When I left DDM, it got to the point where I was like, I capped out here. Like, there's nothing more for me to do here.
Yeah.
And they weren't, and I'd had some conversations and they weren't going to pay me more and this and that. And I was trying to get on a commission structure and it just wasn't happening. And so I was like, okay. So I went to be an internal in-house marketer at Select Health, the health insurance company.
Yeah.
That's our insurance for our employees.
That's quite the transition too. Yeah.
It was but I was comfortable working in the medical space because Intermountain Healthcare was one of my Brandview clients.
Yep.
U of U Healthcare was one
Makes
of my
sense.
Brandview clients. And I had worked as a call center employee at Select Health in 2009.
Okay.
And so I was like, okay,
Maybe we'll
like,
do this.
I know the business. Now I'll get a higher paying job in their marketing department. Guys,
So how do you market for the most hated industry on the planet?
bingo, right? So
Exactly.
they hire me to be their first ever like content marketer and to produce blogs and to actually think about SEO and some of these things. And so I go in there and it is like a pin drop environment. Like you wear your slacks. Lots of people are wearing shirt and ties every day. The executives are the type of people, at least when I was there, that like if you're a mid to lower level employee, if you're not making 100K a year, like you don't really have the relationship with the executives where they even know you exist. That's how it felt.
Yeah.
Now I'm speaking one-sided on that, right? But I had this amazing boss named Jamie, and she honestly, I was there for 9 months before another little startup came in and poached me. And I wouldn't even have lasted 9 months if it wasn't for her.
Yeah,
She
really?
was that boss that was like the embodiment of like female leadership, mixing motherhood with professionalism, and just empowers you in every way, shape, and form. Like,
That's awesome.
if there was ever a boss that should be on a pedestal, it was that woman. And so I learned a lot from her, but like I got to the point where I was like, guys, I can produce enough content like in one day that you guys are accustomed to producing in like a month.
Yeah.
Like I'm coming from the agency type world where
You're
it's
spitting it
fast paced,
out.
multiple articles per day. And now I'm dealing with red tape galore.
Ton of red tape.
And I'm
Yeah.
sitting there like, I remember one time I went to write an article that mentioned McDonald's, not even in a bad light, but it was like
One
about,
past
it was
legal.
about like foods at McDonald's. Like what's the
Yeah.
healthiest option at all these restaurants? And I went to name the restaurants by name and they wouldn't let me do it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what am I supposed to say? 2 parabolic yellow arches and you go there for fast food? Like
Why wouldn't they let you say the name?
legal
Just
stuff.
legal.
They were worried that McDonald's was going to come after them in some way, shape, or form
Yeah.
because we mentioned them. And I'm like,
They're like, McDonald's is our biggest
What?
investor. They're what keeps health insurance companies in business.
right?
No kidding. Well, it was interesting when we had a conversation with like John Huntinghouse. I don't know if you know who that is.
Yeah, I
but
do.
I mean,
He worked
there's
at
a
DDM
ton-
as well.
There's a ton of
Yeah.
red tape in the banking industry too, and just the
Yes.
finance world. And you have to be a lot more creative. Like we and I'm sure you did too. You had to get
Yeah.
a lot more creative with what you were doing.
But also, good
100%.
marketers have good products, right? Like people are like, "Wow, you're such a good marketer." You're like, "No, I mean, like I'm working with a product that's amazing,
Yes.
and that's why I
It
look
makes
so
it-
good." Where
yeah.
like you could be the best marketer in the world and go work for Select Health and never really get any success because you got red tape. Nobody likes health insurance; it's overpriced, right? So
100%.
Yeah.
a good marketer in a bad environment is going to ruin opportunity. So from Select Health, where did you go? Who poached you?
So then I went to a startup in Farmington called Monumetric.
Oh yeah. Very
And
familiar.
And that was honestly like they were working with so many bloggers and helping bloggers monetize
Yep.
through banner ads and things. They brought us in because they saw the money these bloggers were making. They're like, we want some owned and operated properties. So they
Yeah.
brought myself and a guy named Preston in. And Preston worked at Deseret Book, and they brought us in as content directors, just equal. And both of us just were running. And then they lost a client. We were about 8 months in, and then at 9 months in, we got laid off. There were, I think, between 30 and 35 employees, and I think half of us got laid off.
Agency
And-
life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things, they lost a client that was more than 100K a month.
Yep.
And so all of
Oh,
a sudden
really?
they're bleeding and they're like, whoa. And I mean, at the time, like they were paying me 80 and I don't know what they were paying my buddy, probably 80 or 90. He was honestly a better marketer than I am. So he was probably making more money.
So probably 70.
But yeah, right. But it was one of those things where we get laid off, and my wife is 6 months pregnant with our third kid. I have now purchased a home and I have a mortgage, and I'm sitting there like,
What am I gonna do?
holy moly! And now I've got 2 things
my
on my
biggest fear
resume
as a
that are each
business
9
owner.
months,
Yeah.
and I'm like, how do I tell this story? And that was
You're a marketer. You'll figure it out.
right.
Yeah.
This was the best thing that ever happened to me. I drove this old beater Jeep Cherokee that had it was white and it had some rust on the back. And I asked those dudes that day, I was like, hey, do you have a cardboard box? And they're like, we could probably find one. This is Monumetric, right? And then I asked my boss, who was the CMO at the time, I was like, dude, will you take a picture of me? Like, I know this is probably weird, but I just think it's funny. And this is the day that I get laid off, and I'm walking out to my car. So I'm next to my beater Jeep. I'm wearing just, common clothes or whatever, and I have the biggest smile on my face, and I'm holding a cardboard box with all my crap in it. And then I put a caption on the photo that said, help me find a new job. And then I went and posted in like that Facebook group that was PR Utah marketing jobs, all that stuff. I hit LinkedIn and I hit them with the same message, and it was a message of positivity. Like, hey, this is my situation. I got laid off. So did many other people. And I've been told this wasn't a performance-based thing. It was a revenue-based thing, and da-da-da-da. But then I talked about all the things I loved about that company. Did not mention one single thing of distaste toward them. It went like semi-viral within my community.
Oh my gosh.
And all of a sudden I had this army of people helping me to find a job. And within 2 weeks, I had 4 offers, and most of them were 6 figures. So I was like, this is
amazing.
awesome.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're like, man, maybe these guys could fire me in a year and I could get another even higher pay.
So then from there, I went to a company called ClearLink, which you probably heard of.
Of course.
Had a stint there. Took me a minute to find myself, because ClearLink is very like, you
Also
stay in
very-
your lane,
yes, very
you
also
do
corporate,
this.
yeah.
And I'm not that guy.
Yeah.
Like, I'm the guy that's like, oh, organic social? Okay, we'll do that. Oh, you need an article? Okay, we'll do that. Oh, hey, why aren't our writers in WordPress uploading content? Like, we're doing them a disservice by da-da-da. And I think that, like, I'm not the guy who's like pushy, stomping on people's toes. But I think it made them a little uncomfortable, because my boss told me a couple times, he's like, we don't know exactly where you fit,
Yeah.
but we like you and we know you do good work. We just don't know exactly where you fit. And I've talked to Nick Staggy about this before. It's kind of that entrepreneur within the org where you're like, hey, this, blah, 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 blah.
Sometimes it can be too disruptive
Yes.
for like the
You're
org's
like, that's so
culture.
funny. We have something in common. Same. I don't know where I fit either.
Right?
Yeah. Basically.
So I get poached there by one of the job offers that one of those
Originally,
4.
yeah.
And this time they come back and they're like, hey, we'll pay you $130. And at ClearLink, I think I accepted a job for just under 6 figures. And one of the reasons I did it was because my best friend worked there. He's a VP of digital marketing at Vivint. And he's like, dude, come work with me. And so I'm like, okay, cool. It felt like it was a little more secure, right? But like, I live in Saratoga Springs. I was driving out past the airport every day. Like, it got to the point where it was like, oh man. And then to not know where you fit a year and a half in, you're kind of like,
Where do I go from here?
yeah. So I get offered this other job, and this time the ante's bigger, right? It's $130. It's a better title. You manage a team. And I'm like, I can't say no to this. But it was in the fintech industry. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, I guess I just put on my agency hat again and I flip a switch, and now I got to learn fintech, right?
Yeah.
So that lasts 6 months. And all of a sudden I get a blindside layoff, and now I have this salary that I've never had before. Thankfully, I didn't just go on a spending spree, and I had actually saved some money with my wife. But 6 months into this, I get a blindside layoff. Well, this may or may not have had something to do with it. This is right before COVID, October 2019. They later in 2020, I think, in COVID year, they got acquired by Rent-A-Center for like 1.2 billion or something.
Wow.
So I don't know if they were trimming fat. I don't know if I just wasn't providing the value that they thought. Like, I literally asked them in my exit interview, like, hey, I'm not looking for my job back, but like, I mean, I'm a positive guy. Like, what could I do better? And the HR guy was like, I don't even know why I'm firing you. I was just told to do it.
Yeah.
What a stupid world.
It was
I
so
freaking
bad.
hate corporate.
Corporate.
That's
stuff is interesting.
exactly. And that day, I
It's
remember
hard.
I go home, and granted, I'd been through this before, right? And when I was at Monumetric, I showed up at like 11 a.m. at my house, and my wife was like, why are you here?
Yeah, what's going on?
And this time, they did it at the end of the day. I go home. I'm a religious guy, work with the youth group in my church. I go to the youth activity that night, and my wife could like kind of tell something was wrong. She could just tell that I wasn't like quite as upbeat. Maybe something was off. I'm like, okay, I'll talk to you later, right? And so I think in the back of her head, she's like, is this another layoff? Like, what's going on? And she also knew she had been hearing me talk for the better part of a year about wanting to go out on my own. And it was like that scene from Moana where she's just like, it calls me, you know? You didn't know I was going to sing, guys. And
We need
I
more.
love that.
but
Moana
that's
with
what it
my- with
was,
my
is
daughter
I'm
is,
sitting there and I'm like, why do I have the best salary I've ever had? I have benefits and I have this and that, and I'm feeling this way.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden that boot in the rear end of a layoff. And I'm like, I'm not going to find another job. And I already knew it. Now it was a matter of convincing my wife that that was the case. So we take a look at the finances. We look at everything. And after Young Men's that night, she's like, I believe like this is what you have to do. Some of my family members and my best friends looked at me and they're like, are you freaking crazy? Like, you have to do it. So
I love family advice when you're starting a business.
Right?
Family and
It's
friends.
always something you
the best.
should 100% give
Don't
everything
do it.
to. You know?
yes,
You know the
right?
statistics? This is a terrible idea.
And I'm sitting there and I'm like, guys, calm down. Like, I'm not mortgaging my house. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a scrappy dude. Like, I've had side hustles for years. Like, how do you think we have gotten to where we are? It's not because I've always had a high salary, $47,000 a year, but you know, it was grit and grind.
Yeah.
And I'm like, working in that brand view role at KSL, I was always with the sales guys, always. And I'm like, I can sell something if I believe in it. So then I had one DSLR camera, a Sony A7 III, and I'm like, a great camera, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like a hybrid photo video guy. So I'd been doing some freelance with it, this, that, and I'm like, let's go. So I told the world, hey, Macey Media is here. I already own the domain name. I made that announcement, and that was almost 4 years ago. And thankfully, each year it's just gotten a little bit better.
What's been your biggest takeaway from being kind of a career marketer to, and more or less, you know, your whole story is very entrepreneurial. You know, everywhere you went, it was coming up with new ideas or innovating, and maybe being too innovative for some companies, maybe not enough innovation for others.
Great way to put it.
But what's been your biggest learning going from entrepreneur to entrepreneur?
For me, it's when you're an entrepreneur, you still have a safety net, right? You're still getting paid every 2 weeks. And you have other stresses, and your other stresses are things like, am I providing the value? Do I have long-term stability? Am I going to be the first to go if there's a layoff? In my case, I'd been laid off twice, right? By the time I started my company. And so it was like, that creates some insecurities.
Yeah, for sure.
And when you are a disruptor, that can heavily go in your favor, or you could be the first to go. So anytime there were threats of layoffs and stuff, the entrepreneur inside me was always worried about that, because I wasn't the guy who was staying in my lane.
Yeah.
But as an entrepreneur now, I'm like, man, one of the best things for me is the discomfort. You guys know this better than anyone. You have nights where you are so tired, but you can't sleep, and your mind is running. And then you grab your phone and you jot down notes, and then you lay back down, and then you grab your phone and you jot down notes.
You just painted a picture that I have
It's
totally experienced 100 times.
Yes, 100%.
And then you worry about not paying your own mortgage, but the several other people who work for you and their mortgages. And then I'm taking this in a different direction as well. I hope you don't mind.
No.
But one of the things that is so hard for me from being internal to now owning a company is this recognition that not everybody is motivated like I am.
Yeah.
So
that's huge.
That is enormous, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm the guy that doesn't want to be butt in a seat at a desk for 8 hours. That drives me nuts.
Yeah.
But other people are fine with that. And so...
or even want it.
Yes.
That's why the economy works.
That is exactly why. But in my mind, it's like hard, because I'm like, I've lost so much money on, and I don't regret this, I've lost so much money on paying people for jobs where they were being overpaid for what they were doing, because I had the mentality of like, well, I wouldn't do that for that price.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, they would. They don't think like you, Bobby, right? And it's not that one's superior and one's inferior. It's that we're all built differently that way.
For sure.
Right? And so for me, I'm like, I have to put myself in check every day when it comes to pricing and things, because I'm like, well, what would I do it for? And then what can I shell it out to one of my employees for? And how can I pay them a fair rate that's a little bit above market average so they feel valued, but at the same time gives me my margins to run a business and da-da-da-da. And sometimes I find myself like over-explaining to my employees like, oh, well, this and this and this and this and this, to almost like justify myself of why they're only getting paid X when the project was billed at Y. And I'm like, wait a minute, I don't have to do this. Like,
Yeah.
I'm the boss here. Like, I don't have to justify this. Like, this
Yeah.
is how businesses work. It's why I was being paid 47 when somebody else, when the business was making 80 a month.
Yeah.
Right?
You know what? One thing that we've tried to do at Scroll is be completely transparent about how much our services cost, how much people are managing a month, and what our monthly revenue is currently at. So like our entire staff, if they care enough, knows where our monthly revenue is at, how much they're managing, and a lot of them will make a percentage off of the amount of revenue that they manage too. But we did have an employee come to us once and say like, hey, I want 25% of what I manage, because we paid probably like a 5%
Yeah.
plus a base salary, right? And I'm like, okay, great. Yeah, well, then let's get rid of your base salary. And if they cancel, I take it away from you and stuff like that. And he also didn't understand that there's margins in other departments. And what about that health insurance you have? What about the desk you sit at? What about the computer you use? What about the lunch we buy? What about, there's so many things that go into running a business. And I think you're totally right that for me, after running a business for so long and now 4 years, having to sit there and worry about if people can pay their mortgage, make sure they're getting paid every 2 weeks, make sure we have health care for them. There's a trade-off. It's like, would I want to make this X amount of margin at the end of every month on the end of our billing? Or would I rather just be the employee, not worry about anything and just take that paycheck? Sometimes sounds way better. There is that trade-off. Everyone's different. And I've always thought transparency is important because people need to know our margins and why that's such a big deal. But you're totally right. Like, it's a business. It operates like a business.
Yeah. And if you can, as an entrepreneur, as an employee, like understand the business and understand generally how that works, it'll put you so like it's a huge advantage, because one, you can also now speak to the people that sit at the head of the table, so to speak, and speak their language.
Yeah.
And also speak to how, speak to their incentives and vice versa.
To your point, Bobby, not everyone cares about making $1 million a year.
Yep.
Right? Like, they just want to make good content, be paid fairly, go home, and provide for their family.
100%.
So how many employees do you have? And what does Macey Media do in full? Like, I know you do video production. I know you help Shift with their podcast, and that is like such a cool podcast, and you guys do a great job with that. But
thank you.
What does Macey Media do? How do you employ people? Is it all freelance? Do you have W-2 employees? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so great question. So I've kept the business super simple. My wife and I are the only W-2 employees. Everyone else is a contractor. I have one person who is absolutely phenomenal. That's a full-time video editor. I contract them through a company called Kajae, Kajae, in Lehigh, and they source people from all around the world, and then they offer them benefits and a pretty fair wage. So I've got one guy in the Philippines who speaks English. Love that dude. Like, absolutely.
We have a
love
big
him.
Philippine team.
We have 17 full-time people in the Philippines.
And so he produces short form content that is just so good. He's the main editor on all the Shift podcasts.
Oh, wow. And it's amazing.
So good. And so I have him on payroll for 40 hours a week. Then I've got a guy who's he used to film at BYU and do all like their hype reels for the football team and stuff. An amazing editor, but also really talented behind the camera.
I feel like maybe you sent me his stuff before.
So
someone sent me his stuff.
It's not Jaden Sanders, is it?
No. This guy's named Matthew Coles.
Okay.
And so I have him on a retainer, and he works anywhere between 25 and 30 hours a week for me. He's my travel buddy. Like, we go all around the country together as a two-man team filming stuff, and absolutely love that dude. And then I've got 2 web dev guys, and then I've got an SEO guy.
Oh,
and
nice.
Then I've got a few other people that are not on, all of those people are on retainer. So there's 7 people who are paid like either part-time or full-time hours, just flat fee every single month. And then I've got a few copywriters that are, here and there. Yep.
That's funny because Dan and I are the only people that aren't on W-2 at Scroll.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Everyone else is. It's like the reverse. But
It's just how we've structured
Yeah.
our entity and everything. But
Utilizing contractors, I mean, still to this day, I look at QuickBooks at the end of the month and see how much we spend on contractors. And I'm like,
It's like,
man, we could employ 2 people for that. But
yep.
the value of having people as contractors, like, why did you set your business up the way you did? Do you think it came from some of the fear of having to let people go in the
That's
future?
100%. I am a people person through and through.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to have a hard conversation. Like I'll have it. But if I can avoid certain things, I absolutely will. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, the first 3 years of Macey Media, it was like that first year was all about replacing that salary.
yeah.
And then the second year was about growth, and third year was about growth. And you get smarter as you go, right? But I'm not the dude who, like, you get like a Nick Staggy, for example. That dude is a wizard at like building teams and coming in, and he can be the sales guy and he can be the CMO of his own company. And he can whip up revenue and he can do some projects. For me, I'm that guy who has to like dip my toe in the water, and it's kind of like, well, can I do it? And then how can I replace myself and remove myself, if that makes sense?
Yeah.
So that's how I structured and I built. And then I just found people who are better than me at certain things. Like Matt Coles, this dude was one of my first, he was the first guy that I ever put on like a permanent retainer. And he's been on retainer for several years now. And I keep upping his retainer because he just keeps doing better and better work. And the more money I make, the more money I give him.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's like, once I realized how much better he is at certain things than I am, I was like, I can't afford to not have him.
And there was no obligation up front as a contractor, right? Like you didn't say, I'm going to pay you salary and benefits for years and years. Instead, it was like, I'll pay you. You almost gave him an entrepreneurial opportunity, right?
Yep, 100%. And he's not the guy who wants to go sell. And I'm the guy who's going to network and I'm going to sell and this and that. And then I can have a vision and I can give him very little in the scope and he will turn it into gold.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I'm sitting there and I'm like, those are incredible people to have. But
Yeah,
one of the
totally.
reasons I keep them 1099 is because I never had the cash flow to buy them the MacBooks that they need or this or that. I needed all
of
that
them had
money.
the gear already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now, like slowly by slowly, like I bought 2 new cameras this year, and I think my bill was like 12 grand for these 2 new cameras, right? Get a couple of lenses, get some nice camera
gear's
bodies.
so expensive. I mean, it is. It is.
Absolutely
just
is. But I'm like, we need that as a company.
Yeah.
And I can't, like, I didn't want to go out and finance and take on a bunch of debt because I'm just bootstrapped, right? Like, this was my savings account that funded it. And so it's one of those things where the 1099 relationship just works out. The other thing that I love about this that I think a lot of people don't realize, I've got 2 credit cards in my wallet. One's a personal, one's a business. And everything that I can, I have it go through there for rewards, right? Now, this can get you in trouble if you're irresponsible financially. Thankfully, I'm not like the best financially, but I'm also not like a complete imbecile. So I manage my money and I pay off my credit cards.
Yeah.
Now, there have been times where I've had to carry balances for cash flow purposes or whatever. But in general, I have a Delta Sky Miles card here for the business because I do a lot of travel for business. And then I have like a Capital One venture card over here. And that's for the personal use, right? So 1099 employees, I pay them on my credit card.
Wait, how?
And I
yeah,
have
yeah.
them,
Well, he just
I have
have
them
him
send
send
me
an
an
invoice.
invoice,
Just
dude.
invoice.
Yeah,
So-
we do the same thing, actually.
So
I'm
on
realizing.
average, I'm spending. Yeah. I'm glad you realized. Woo!
I'm like, wait, how? And then I was like, wait, yeah, Tyson sends us. Yep. I get it.
But so many people don't do that,
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
And so
You
you're
just pay
you're-
us straight cash. Yeah.
yeah. So you're talking about like yesterday, I was looking at tickets to Switzerland, and I have enough Sky Miles to take my wife and I to Switzerland for free
Yeah.
from a flight standpoint.
Awesome.
We should go in September because
And-
I think I'll be there in September.
Dude, we got to talk after this. But I'm sitting there and I'm like, that doesn't happen if I'm not putting 15 grand on my credit card every month,
Right.
just from, business employee type costs. And some people are putting way more than that. But like for me, I can run my business for me to pay my employees, not pay myself, but pay my employees that are on retainer and then pay the expense for my business. You're looking at about 15K a month, right? To just keep the doors open and not accrue debt. And so I'm like, that's great for my credit card.
Great. We do the same
We do
thing.
the same thing with our
Yeah.
cards.
Yeah, we use 2 Amex cards for our business, depending on which one has better points. But I've always been a credit card travel points hacker.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's nice. We share points.
We
and
share
it's
points
fun.
every couple months. We're transferring 100,000 points to each other, you know, and
Yep.
it's like every year we get to go on trips with those points. It's so nice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and it's nice because then it's like, okay, well, cool. Well, now I'm able to do some of these things that maybe I wouldn't have done otherwise because it would have been irresponsible
yeah.
financially.
Who would have paid
right?
$6,000 out of the business to go to Switzerland?
Yes.
You know, it's
Yeah.
or even personally, it's like, why?
Yeah, or take the company draw and potentially have taxes associated with that or whatever,
Yeah.
whatever
you
it
name
is,
it.
right? And so I just think of it from that standpoint of like, I keep my business simple. At the end of the year, I send out 1099s. They pay their taxes. It keeps me good from an equipment standpoint where I can invest in certain equipment for Macey Media, but I'm not always having to buy other people their stuff. Now, one thing I will do is like I always provide my guys with really good hard drives, things like that. And I'm like, hey, look. And then I give them access to all my subscriptions. And I'm like, look, you want to go use this for another project? Go do it. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's part of the perk of working here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But, and like Matt, my lead videographer, he borrows the equipment all the time. And I never, he even told me once, he's like, hey, like, do you want like a commission on this? Like, I'll share the revenue with you. And I'm like, dude, go bless your family, man. If I'm not
Yeah.
using the equipment or if we're not using it, like, go do it. And so there are different ways that I try to bless them. But it's like, I didn't have the cash flow to go W-2. I was afraid of having to lay people off, bring them on, lay them off, bring them on, lay them off. So I just set this expectation of retainers and hey, and like one of my best friends owns an agency in Davis County and he is so good at social media ads. And I had him running content strategy on a retainer and the client came to me and they're like, hey, we're reducing the budget by the exact amount that I paid him every month. And it was for what he was doing. And so I had a hard conversation with him that was like, it was hard, but not hard because there's so much mutual respect there. And I was like, dude, I'm sorry, but like, you know that I'll find another way to bring you in when I can.
Yeah.
But like, as of right now, it's been a good 8 months, but they're changing the budget and
Nothing we can do about it.
it's literally
Yeah.
your section that's being cut out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so, and guess what? We still talk almost every day.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
we're still good friends.
Yeah, for sure.
It's funny because we've had to lay off one person ever, and I still talk with him like all the time. We're really good friends, and it was the moment for him, like it was for you, that made
It's like
him
a
realize.
catalyst moment.
Yeah.
And now him and his wife kill it. They are doing
Yeah.
in so many ways. I'm like, you guys are doing better than I am. Like they're just
Right.
doing so well financially through entrepreneur ventures. So it's funny how sometimes hard conversations and layoffs lead to success. But
Yeah.
so with Macey Media, then you grew, you have contractors, you have employees. Now you have this like actual business. You've got a heartbeat. You've got expenses every month that you got to keep up on. How do you continue to find customers? I think that's everyone's question ever when you
Oh,
start
yeah,
a
man.
company. You're like, wait a second, you make money every month? How? Like, where do you find
Yep.
people to pay you money?
Yeah.
It's
So how do you find customers?
Oh.
What type of customers are they?
So almost every one of my customers that has passed through has been a friend prior. People say don't do business with family and friends. And I'm like, I got nothing to hide.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to show up to the plate. So as long as they do, only one of us is going to get screwed.
Yeah.
If something happens, if somebody gets screwed, it's going to be me because I'm not going to drop the ball. I care too much
Yeah.
about the reputation from that standpoint. So when I started out, everything was personal brand. Remember how I told you I had that Facebook post that was like, help me find a new job, propped up against my
Yeah.
rusted Jeep. That taught me the power of personal branding.
For sure.
And I'm like, when people like you and when they feel that you actually care about them, they'll bend over backward for you. And you never want to abuse that. At least I never do. But there are times where you can ask people for help in appropriate ways, right? So what I did is I knew my formula, and my formula was go to the socials, right?
Yeah.
And it was post on LinkedIn, because the last several jobs that I had, it was because I was posting content that people found interesting on LinkedIn, and then that led to interviews, and then that led to my job, right?
Yeah.
And so ultimately, I was like, organic social is a way that I'm just going to blast, and people are going to self-select when they need me. But if they like me, then when they need video or when they need content marketing or when they need XYZ service that I offer, they'll know to come to me. It's like, how many of us know real estate agents? And it's like, at any given moment, we could totally just be like, oh yeah, I got 5 real estate agents that could sell me a house or could help sell my home. But it's like, who are you going to go with? You're going to go to the one that you've established a relationship and trust with.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're going to talk about real estate, and sometimes they're going to ask you about your families, right? And I'm the guy that's like, look, I'm going to be your friend first, and I'm going to try and provide value on social media based on like what I feel comfortable talking about. And then when you need me, you can self-select. And if I'm not the right guy, I'll tell you straight up that I'm not the right guy.
Yeah.
Like, I got a neighbor right now who I've given a lot of free marketing advice to, and she wants to do some video stuff. And I'm like, look, I'm not your guy. Like, my price points are up here, and I'm working with businesses, and you're launching something scrappy, and I respect it, but like, I don't have the time to do that. Here are a few other people that can, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So for me, it's really coming down to this idea of, well, now I lost my train of thought.
Or just people
No, but
buy,
like-
people
but-
buy from
but
people.
What type of, how do you find your customers?
I get
and-
my leads through networking, both in person and social. And then now it's a referral based business. So like, it's funny because I'm that hypocrite who like, I offer SEO, and we do a really good job for a few clients on SEO, and it's bringing us some good money. But like, I get emails all the time from people being like, your listings on your own website, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, I know. But,
Yeah.
but like, I haven't addressed it because
Yeah.
SEO is not how I'm getting leads for my business right now. How I'm getting leads for my business is by being a human being and by
Yeah.
making friends. And then people are like, oh, you know what? Go to Bobby, or let me tag Bobby, or this or that. And so it's been really rewarding that way, because then I'm also more invested. If I may, I will dive into something that I think is valuable here, though.
Do it.
Yeah.
Being a people person, you guys have, for all I know, you're already doing this, but I've won a lot of business this way. The moment I get introduced to somebody, I hit them with a video. And I use an app called Loom,
Yeah, Loom's awesome. We love Loom.
Loom.com. And you can do it from your phone, you can do it from your desktop, whatever. I hit them with a video instantly. To give you an idea, I was Tuesday night last week. I'd been working like a madman, about to go on the Mormon trek, right? And I know I'm not going to have service because I'm going to be in the middle of Wyoming. And somebody, a photographer that I've worked with named Laura, had introduced me, or she said, I'm going to introduce you to this person. And I was getting nervous because I'm like, that email is going to come through when I don't have service. So I messaged her and I was like, hey, just FYI, I'm not going to have service Wednesday through Saturday. If you can make the intro before, that's great. If not, will you just mention something like, hey, Bobby's out of town? And I had my vacation responder on or whatever, but like, you know how it is. So this person emails, or she makes the intro at like 11:45 at night. I'm laying in bed and I see my phone chime and I'm like, oh crap. Do I look? Do I not look? I looked. And I get up out of bed. I go into my basement where I've built out a pretty sweet studio. I flip on my studio lights. I have a DSLR mounted up as my webcam. So there's the depth of field, the bokeh and all that. And I flip that on and I grab my mic just like this. And I made her a 1-minute video and wipe the kind of like sleepiness out of my eyes. I make her a 1-minute video just introducing myself. It's literally like, hey, Michelle, I'm Bobby Macey. Laura, if you're watching, thank you for the introduction. Just wanted to put a face with a name. Now you know who I am. I would love to chat with you. By the way, I'm going to be out of town for a couple of days, so if you don't get a response from me, that's why. Here's my Calendly link. You can book a time. So she books while I'm out, and I come back to this, and then there was an email that's like, Bobby, I have never received a personalized video like that in my life. Thank you. And I just had the call with her yesterday. If I do not land that book of business, I will be mind blown. Like, it will blow my mind.
Well, and
based
she'll
off,
remember you.
yes. So another story, there's another gal who builds websites. Her name's Sarah. And I met her through a common friend. And right, instead of doing the nice to e-meet you email that's so typical, I hit her with a Loom video. Sorry.
Yeah.
I hit her with a Loom video, and we then have a Zoom call.
I said, nice to meet you. I remember now.
Yes.
I was like, I did that just the other day. Nice to meet you. And I did it to Abby. So
Well, now he owes you a Loom video. And so this gal, 6 months down the road, I get a random phone call from a client that's an HVAC company. And they ended up being like, I think it was like 30 to 40 grand in business over the course of several months. Those guys are like, hey, Sarah sent us your info. She said you're awesome at XYZ. So I land the deal, and then I hit Sarah with another one, and I was like, dude, I owe you big time. Like, thank you for the referral, and da-da-da-da. She was building the website for him. I became the video partner. And I kid you not, I can trace it back to that Loom video. She told me, she's like, Bobby, I meet with hundreds of like high-level executives every single year, and never once have I received a video like that. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, guys, this is so simple. Half the time making the video is easier than sending the email.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, just hitting record and just talking.
well, especially in your space where you're selling them on video.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
and
it
all of a
makes
sudden
total
they're
sense.
like,
Yep.
this makes a lot of sense. Right. Like if you're pitching someone on a website, maybe you should bring them a pitch deck that is a website.
Totally.
Right. And they're like, here's an example of what we can do. This is your proposal. So especially when you're going for higher retainer opportunities like that.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
It's the secret sauce that so many people just don't take that extra step. I could have laid in bed and I maybe would have gotten still the phone call earlier this week by sending the nice to e-meet you.
Yeah.
Right. But when I got on that call yesterday, it was a Zoom call. When I got on that call, that woman, she knew exactly how she could treat me because she knew that I was high energy. She knew that I was a smiley feller. And that it's like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Like I've already established that because I took the initiative to send a video, right?
Yeah.
The relationships, it in my opinion, it just helps go next level. And it's like, you don't have to beat your competition out by 1,000%, right?
Yeah.
I know that's like a made up number, right? But
1,010%.
You just have
Yes.
to take it to the next step.
you got to beat them out by 1%.
Yeah.
It's like how many guys in a basketball game are fighting for a rebound and it tips, and then all of a sudden one of them secures it. It's like they were both right there, and then one of them secured it, and he got credit for that rebound, right? And in that case, it's our business. Like if they like me this much more, or if I have done something to make them feel that much more like a human being instead of just a number in a machine, I may win that business. And over time, that could equate to a lot of money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and this is an awesome tip, especially, I mean, for anyone in any industry to, be a lot more personable and approachable.
Yeah.
And then, and sending Loom videos is, I think, an awesome, actionable tip. What are some other like ways that, business owners, agency owners can network, maybe that you've experienced or you've used?
Yeah. So great question. I've tried a lot of things. I've tried the BNI. I've tried, I technically didn't sign up for ConnectShare, but I've been to a ton of those meetings. I still go to a lot of like the Tacos Together events.
Yeah.
And I don't go there with the mindset of like, what am I going to get out of this? What's the ROI? Like one time my wife actually questioned me on the ROI. It was this Tacos Together event where I was super busy and I was like, I'm going to it. And it was at the University of Utah and it was a water fight. And she's like, really? Like, that's what you're going to spend your time on today when you've got X, Y, and Z built up? And I'm like, hon, this humanizes me.
Yeah.
And I go there and I was able to interact with a lot of people that I have relationships with on LinkedIn, but hadn't met them in person yet. And it's like, yo, get over here. Give me a hug. What taco are you eating? Dude, that looks better than mine. I'm going back. Right? Like, and then all of a sudden you have these human to human interactions. And then a couple months later, you get a referral from that person and you're like, we've never done work together. I don't even know if they've been to my website to see the type of quality, but we had some sort of interaction that was positive and they remember that and they send stuff my way. Right? So I like to go to these events, but I'm also an extrovert. And I'm that dude who leaves feeling empowered.
Yeah.
Like another Tacos Together event, I dressed up as a taco and I went there. Imagine that, right?
So you were a cannibal.
Yes.
You were
And
taco eating a taco.
it got a little weird for a minute. But it's like Starsky and Hutch where he's like, this is going to get weird. But I don't know. Sometimes I'll go and I'll vlog these events and it's like, do I really want to vlog this event? No. But if I'm there and I separate myself and they see me holding the $10,000 rig, they're going to look at me and I'm going to be perceived in their mind as a certain
person.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and the equipment you're holding gives some confidence in maybe working with you in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I go in there with my iPhone, then it's one thing and I could produce potentially the same video. But if I walk in there with a small rig and a camera and the Rode mic on top and this and that, and, they're looking at me different.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, all right,
Totally.
Maybe Bobby knows what he's saying.
Maybe there is a chance.
The road is just on backwards or something.
There's a chance.
I'm like, I just like to hear myself talk, guys. That's why it's pointed out. But most of my stuff comes from events and former friends. Like one of my clients is Stanford Medicine. And it's like, what does Macey Media have business doing landing Stanford Medicine as a client? They've paid me a lot of money over the past 3 years. And it was a BYU Idaho friend. Wow. He and I lived by each other for 10 years. We go on with our careers and we only talk to each other on social media. And now I've done website work for them. I've done more than 20 long form videos for them, like heavy graphics, a lot of stuff that it's like, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars that they've paid me. And it was because this dude, he saw my stuff on social. We initially had this friendship and it wasn't even like a super tight friendship. It was, we were in the same ward at BYU Idaho. We lived in the same apartment complexes. We would chit chat, this, that. We liked each other, but we weren't besties. And then 10 years goes by and he has a poor experience with a video team in Palo Alto. And then little old Bobby had popped up in his feed and he's like, hey. And all of a sudden I'm like, how much money? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're like, I think we can make that work.
I think we can.
Yeah.
Well, that's the power of networking. And we built our business very similar.
Yeah.
We've networked pretty hard in different ways, not as much locally, but nationally. We have most of our clients are not here in Utah.
Yeah.
But our first few years, it was all family and friends, referrals, everything we could do. Just let everyone know what we did, post about it on our socials, reach out to friends that own businesses.
Yeah.
People from college or even high school that we knew and that worked at certain places. So totally, that is like, I would say if you want to build a really good lifestyle brand or a lifestyle company or a solopreneur company or something that gets you to be like safely wealthy and comfortable, like that is a great business to build. If you want to go for the empire and you want to go for like gold, that's where you branch out into like building this massive team and trying to run paid ads and generate 300 leads a month. And there's different business models, but it sounds like the route you want to take is that you want to be able to be involved. You want them to feel the Macey and Macey Media when they work with you. So
You said that so beautifully.
what kind of business is it that you're trying to build in the long term? Is this something that you want to go full empire and build to the mega millions, or is it something that you want to be a part of, like your family and your close friends, and you work with these customers one-on-one?
Yeah, great. So the empire is going to come through other streams of revenue in my mind.
Cool.
And Macey Media is going to be in the next 5 years, 1 to 10 million in revenue. And we're going to have a freaking awesome lifestyle. And I'm going to find places to be smarter and remove myself. And a lot of people are still going to feel the Macey in Macey Media. So that's what I want. And then I always tell myself, I'm like, look, with how I think about the margins and where I can get things is if I get to 1 million, then I should be able to have $250K a year to play with. And what I mean by play with is
build the empire.
Yes. That's real estate. That's this, that's, maybe some angel investments, things like that. And if I have $250K a year to play with, all of a sudden in several years, you've got quite a bit of stuff that's bringing you in some money. on the side. And right now I'm 35. So I'm like, hey, look, if I get to the point by age 40 where it's multi-millions and I've got 500K or $1 million to play with every year, then all of a sudden I'm doing what I want.
Yeah.
And if Macey Media is not what I want to be doing, then I'm not going to be doing it.
I was
Right?
going to say I have a hard time believing that you wouldn't want to do it because you are so passionate about it.
Yeah.
It just seems like this is one of the loves of your life, you know?
It is. It's my fourth child, and it's one of those things where I like it because I feel like for the first time in my career, it's Bobby Unleashed. Nobody's telling me.
It's so cool.
Nobody's,
Bobby Unleashed.
Yes, nobody's telling me that I'm overpaid.
That's his new podcast.
Yeah, Bobby Unleashed in that movie voice. But that's exactly what it is, because it's like nobody's telling me that I'm paid too much. Nobody's telling me I don't know exactly where you fit. And it's like, it's a hunt and kill mentality. Like, what's stopping me from hitting $1 million this year? Myself. It really is.
Yeah.
It's that I'm really enjoying. I took half the month of July off.
Yeah.
Like, people used to ask questions when I did that. And well, I didn't used to do it, actually.
Right. People
They
would
would
have
have asked questions. Yes.
Where's Bobby? He's not in the office.
Yeah, we spent a week in Bear Lake, and then
Yeah.
I did track, and then my wife went to Oregon for 3 days, and I was on dad duty, and like there was just a lot of stuff that was amazing in July. And because of a good team and a good infrastructure, I was able to manage, right? But it does come down to that, Shane. It comes down to this idea of I'm trying to build a lifestyle business, and then I will figure out other ways to bring in revenue. And one of those is a side business that I have, which I won't get too deep into that because I don't want you guys to, fall asleep. But it's called seemycampsite.com. And for the last 2.5 years, we have been building this, and we have been doing video tours of campgrounds. And it's me and
That's
two other
cool.
partners.
That is so
And
cool.
it is everything that you think it is. It's this concept of like you pull in with an RV and you're like, wow, I should have gotten site 12 instead of site 5. Wish I would have known that
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
And you and lots of these maps are like hand-drawn maps on the
Yeah.
government websites and stuff.
They're not really
And-
showing what's actually there.
It's like the
Yep.
concept of stadium view when you go to buy a
Yep,
ticket to
100%.
stadium, you click on it and you can see right where you're sitting.
It's exactly what we're doing with campsites.
That's cool.
yeah, it's cool.
So we have we've made a lot of videos for
Yeah.
campsites, and it's just been
Just in Utah or everywhere?
just in Utah right now. And then
Yeah.
the goal, I honestly think this is my sellable business. I don't think Macey
Yeah.
Media is the type of business that like maybe I would have a client that is like, hey, we'll just buy you out and come be our in-house team, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe I would consider that.
Or Scroll's like, we want to do content.
Yes.
So
And boom, right?
yeah.
But it's one of
partnership.
this. See, my campsite is like REI buys us for millions one day. That's the vision
That's your
there.
vision there.
But it's a
That's a great
content-based
idea.
business, so it takes, you know how it is. We're on YouTube and we are grinding right now. Everything's organic. It's all been sweat equity, right?
Yeah.
I have 2 partners, amazing dudes, and like we're this close to revenue right now.
Yeah.
We have a few pitches out, but like I had the cojones to go into Maverick. I got a meeting through a friend who works there. And last year when we had this big of an audience, I went into Maverick and asked them for $100,000. That sounds kind of douchey.
no, it doesn't at all.
No, not at all.
But I went in there and I asked them for $100,000. And I
Yeah.
said, hey, this is what we're building. $100,000's cheap right now because 2 years from now, this is not going to be $100,000. And ultimately, they didn't go for it. But it was one of those things where it was like,
Go for it.
I don't know if I'm just like overconfident, but I'm like,
I think it's a
I'm
great
like,
idea.
this is my sellable
Make
business.
them regret it. Sorry,
Yeah.
Maverick.
Yeah. And one day they may come back because we do really align, and it was an awesome meeting, but it just wasn't the right time for them to put that investment into something that wasn't
They
already
were wanting
proven.
to purchase. Come
Sorry,
and Go.
Maverick. Timing's
They were-
everything.
They were
Yeah.
they were purchasing. Come
They
and
were
Go at
thinking
the
about
time.
come and go at the time.
Yeah, they were.
But so I'm thinking about things and like, hey, look, Macey Media is basically funding a large portion of See My Campsite right now because I was brought in as the production arm. The other guys, they've since learned the craft of production, but that wasn't their initial skill set, right?
Yeah.
So that's the only business that I have partners in. which is I have a question for you guys after this, but I'm learning a lot there, and I'm learning that you don't have to do it on your own, and that's real nice.
So especially if you find the right people.
Yeah,
the right people are absolutely key.
Yeah, so people don't know me as the See My Campsite guy right now unless they subscribe, right? But because I do go on camera and this and that, but it's one of those things that right now I'm like, I think in the next couple years that will overtake Macey Media as my highest revenue.
I think you're saying something that a lot of agency owners and people we've had on this podcast have said, which is that they build an agency to help fund other things and grow other things.
Yep.
Because once you have an agency that is profitable and doing well for customers, you start to realize that you can build your own product or service based business. Yeah, we have a big customer that they work with hundreds of service-based businesses, HVAC, plumber, home remodel, stuff like that. And he's not a general contractor or anything, but he knows the ins and outs of how to grow one of those businesses. So just partnered with a GC and started his own home remodeling company, right? Like I'm working on a product company right now because I know now after looking through all the product companies we've worked with on how to grow a actual product brand.
Yeah.
So same thing when you're into content, you are seeing that there's this opportunity when you're producing all this content for other companies where you could go and create maybe something that doesn't have the Macey name attached to it that could be sellable in the future.
Same with like Jay Davis and Pillow Cube. It was like
I was literally going to bring him up.
Yeah, he brought it up on our podcast.
Yeah, and he was like, why we're doing all this good work? Why can't we just do it for ourselves? And I think at some point, every agency owner eventually has that little epiphany, that little flip of the switch and decides to say, hey, we've built this machine. Let's put our own ideas through the machine now.
Yep. I love that you brought up Jay Davis because that guy is phenomenal.
Yeah, Jay's
Talk
awesome.
about a cool personality. I'm in Disneyland a couple months ago with the Only Brands team, Share House and Shift and this and that. And that was the first time that I'd met Jay Davis and his partner, Will. And I'm talking to them and he's telling me all these different things that he's involved with. And I'm like, you have so many streams of revenue.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like I saw him change from one pair of Jordans to the other pair of Jordans mid Disneyland. And I'm like, you actually took the effort to bring 2 pairs of Jordans to Disneyland. I didn't. And I wish I did because my feet hurt right now. Right. And I'm sitting there.
He should have worn Kizik's.
I know. I have a pair and I was not wearing them.
Oh, that's funny.
But it's one of those things where I'm like, this dude, he's living a life that seemingly is really good from a relationship standpoint. He seems to be good with God and his relationship there. And he seems to have several businesses that are profitable. And I'm like, I like that. There's a lot that I can learn from you.
Yeah. Jay
was a great conversation.
Yeah. One of the best to sit down with and just understand like how do you build profitable company after profitable company? One of my things that I want to get into as I launch my product brand is, am I a one-hit wonder? Right? Like I want to know, am I a one-hit wonder that created one successful business and can't do it again? Yeah. And that's the whole reason why I want to start another one is because I want to prove to myself that like
you can do it.
I can do it time after time after time. But so I guess to kind of wrap things up, advice that you would have for someone who is in a similar situation that you've been in, right? Like they want to leave their job and maybe start their own thing, or they've been laid off, or they're creative running freelance and wanting to grow it. Like what advice do you have for those people?
Wonderful question. Few things I would say to address that is one, you do need some level of financial reserve. Like you need a runway. And my runway was only $15,000. And my expenses at the time were about $5,000 a month. And so
3 months.
So I had 3 months until I was empty.
You really probably had 1 month. I mean, if you're being honest, yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those where my wife was like, "I'll give you 3 months, and I don't expect you to replace your $130K salary or whatever." But it was one of those things where like we got laid off before I was planning on starting Macey Media, right? And so the financial reserve is a wonderful thing to have because it gives you time to figure things out.
Freedom and flexibility.
Yes, and you have to spend money to make money sometimes, and even simple things like putting up a website, even if you do it on Squarespace, you're still going to be paying $200 a year type thing, right? And so you have these expenses that you're like, oh man. So the financial reserve is one of them. The other thing is, I'm a big believer that your personal brand can be a lot of things, and you got to tell people what you're doing. Like if people don't know, like I have a friend who does my health insurance now through a BNI group, whereas I have a better friend who lives a few doors down from me. I didn't know he offered health insurance.
Yeah.
I would have walked down the street and said, dude, sign me up. And I would have been his easiest acquisition, but I didn't know what he did because he never talked about it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, talk about what you're doing. You walk into a dinner party and one of the first questions that's going to come up is, hey, what do you do for work, guys? And are you going to be like, oh, actually, like, there's a dinner party. Sorry, I'm not going to tell you because I'm here to play games.
Yeah.
I will whoop you in Settlers of Catan, but I will not tell you what I do for work.
Like, until they start really winning 2 wheat for 1 ore, and all of a sudden they're wheeling deal, and you're like, I know you're in sales.
Yeah, when they're slinging their ports, then all of a sudden conversation changes. But I'm like, it's not awkward to tell people what you do.
No. And I think a lot of people, you just need a mindset shift. You just really do. You just need to get over yourself. Because everybody's interesting, you know.
That's actually,
has a
I feel
story.
personally attacked because sometimes people are like, "What do you do?" And I just say, "Oh, I work in marketing."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Where?" I'm like, "Oh, for a company in Kaysville." I avoid the conversation.
It's also situational, right?
Yeah.
Like if you know the conversation's going to be 15 seconds and you're moving on, you need that version of it.
Yeah.
But if you're a dinner party, that's different, right? Or like we're all on LinkedIn because each of us is consuming content from not only each other, but other people that we respect, and we get ideas and we like that, and it feeds our souls and our minds. But we're also publishing content because we're trying to have the most humble version of saying, look at me, without saying, look at me. We want LinkedIn and our personal brands to be a lead gen tool for us. You absolutely should want that. Whether you're a religious person and you want to bring people to Jesus, or whether you're running a business, or whether it's both, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
I think the personal brand is so underrated, and I think that's massive. So
Yeah, it's huge.
No, I think that's a great point. And I think a lot of people think I have to have 100,000 followers on Instagram or have this big. You don't.
You really
You
don't.
don't.
You just have to. You have to know your audience. You have to know who you're talking to.
Yep.
And yeah, like it's much more valuable to have a smaller audience and make a lot of money off that audience than have 1 million followers that you can't convert at all.
100%.
It's like a concert. Like, you know, would you rather play for 300 people that know every word to every one of your songs, or 10,000 people, but you're the first out of 7 openers?
Yeah.
And that boo you off the stage.
You know?
It's like that episode that you guys did with John where he was talking about Vasa and Phoenix.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, we took the influencers and then we, ultimately geo-targeted, and those ads outperformed the other ads and da-da-da-da, right? And it was like the influencers alone weren't enough. Their 1 million followers weren't enough because his restriction was within 5 miles, right? And so, I actually did my research.
Thanks.
Little
Listen to
internal
that
link from
episode.
this
Yeah.
podcast to that podcast
love
for
it.
you.
I love it.
But case in point, I think that those are some of the keys. Have your runway. Invest in your personal brand. There was another that I threw in there, but it's surround yourself with the people that are actually doing things that you want to do. That was one of my biggest things. Is I'm like, there's that little like almost taboo phrase that's like, surround yourself with 5 millionaires and you'll be the 6th. Surround yourself with 5 homeless people and you'll be the 6th, right?
Your net worth is your network.
Yeah. And we said that earlier, but that's so true. Like the people that I associate with now and that I'm really hanging out with are people that are thinking differently than my parents thought. Or I'm the only entrepreneur in my family right now among my siblings. And like, I think some of my siblings look at me and they know that I'm at least making money. And so it's no longer like a, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But it's like sometimes they look at me and they're like, you did what? And
You can thank them for all the advice they gave you about
About
startup
not
statistics.
wanting to do it.
yes. But it's one of those things where it's like, for me, I'm like, I'm surrounding myself with people by design, very intentionally, trying to spend my time with people who I'm going to leave feeling inspired and uplifted.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know which one of you was managing the whole podcast league. I think it was our conversation with you, Dan, where you're like, hey, you can book here. Dude, I booked immediately. And the reason I did is because I was like, why am I going to push off a good thing?
Yeah.
I'm available on Wednesday. I'll make myself available. These are good dudes who have built a respectable business, and we have a lot of mutual friends. So do I want to be in a room with them? Absolutely.
And next time next time I'm gonna send a loom.
Next time, hey, we really want you on the podcast.
See, the good news about you dudes is you have faces for TV, but voices for radio. So you've got this combination where you're like, hey, we can go on video, but we can also sound really good.
Love it,
I
Bobby.
wish.
It was super fun to talk to you today, Bobby, and appreciate your perspective. You bringing kind of like this intrapreneur to entrepreneur, journey that you've been on, and your advice today. So I'm excited for everybody to listen.
Yeah, I think it's been so helpful. And the thing that really excites me is just being in a room with you gives me energy to be more excited about my personal brand and my business and my life. So I think that it's pretty evident why those 1-minute videos work, because your energy provides a lot of energy for other people. So it's been
thank you.
Awesome to have you on. And I think if anything, people can take from this that like you are your best salesperson and you do such a good job of that, just being yourself. So it's been great to have you. This has been great.
Bobby, where can people find you?
Oh, thank you. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, maceymedia.com. You'll find me
alliteration.
There. Awesome. Yes.
Macey Media.
Macey Media, baby. Dun, dun, dun.
Thanks again, Bobby. Appreciate it.
And you can find me on the new Moana soundtrack.
On the new Moana soundtrack or the coolest Bronco in town.
Yes.
Thanks,
Thank
Bobby.
you, gents. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bobby.